We need a theme song, so could you please send me a theme song? 'Cause we don't really have a theme song, and we could really use a theme song. Send us a song. I welcome you wherever you may sit from my home that sits on Treaty 8 land, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree and Dene. This territory is home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. I thank the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. Tremendously grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. I make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory I reside on.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Alyssa. How is everybody's week? Mine was pretty good. I feel like I'm getting back into the swing of things now. I was out of the swing for a while, but now I'm back in it. Ish. So, a bit of a story about today's broadcast. Something seems to be telling me that my internet is poor. I don't know what that's about. Anyway, hopefully this is coming through fine. So I had no idea really what I was gonna do today. I was just like, I don't know. I feel like I have like lots of stuff on my mind and I'm just not quite getting it out onto paper yet in the form of any sort of poetry or stories, really. I'm just kind of feeling a little bit like there's too much that I have to do that I can't do all of the stuff that I want to do. Anyway, and then last night I was chatting with some people, uh, getting something really exciting kind of going, and talking more about creating new works and about theater a lot. We were talking about, and it was just a really fun conversation. And so then I was thinking so much about that and like, oh my gosh, I feel like I have so much that I could be creating and I'm just not doing it quite yet. So I had no idea what I was going to do. I came home, felt really under the gun time wise, and tried to write part two of the fairy tale that I was working on that I had shared previously. So that one was the Calling the Dragon Part 1 is one that I wrote before. My daughter Matilda wrote another version of that and shared it with you as well. I do intend to write 3 parts of that fairy tale. And I started, and it's not that I didn't like what I was writing. It's just, it felt like it wasn't going anywhere. Like it felt like I was really just working to create words that weren't like advancing the story. And so I'm just calling that one well, I want to call it a fail for today. Now, when I say the word fail, I don't mean like now I should go jump off a bridge and stop writing. I just mean like failure is an important part of the process. We hear a lot about Thomas Edison talking about that like, and I feel like I say it a lot that I understand in my head that failure is part of the process. And still, sometimes it just kind of hurts. Like when something does not work out the way that I wanted it to on the deadline that I wanted it to work out on. I am getting a lot better though at not quitting when something doesn't work out like that. And just sorry, I'm a little chilly today. Um and just sometimes I put a pin in it and come back to it later. Sometimes I think about something else and just kind of move on and so I'm going to just talk to you guys a little bit about what I did today with my quasi failure. So what I did was I decided to just go and um, look up some Shakespeare stuff. Now, the amount of times that I like read sonnets on here or talk about Shakespeare might lead you to believe that I am an enormous Shakespeare fan. And I do think that a lot of the stories are really interesting. I think the writing's really cool in a lot of ways. I like reading Shakespeare. I like working on Shakespeare plays. I do not like watching Shakespeare very often. I think it's boring. Not through any fault of the script and not really any fault of the actors or the directors necessarily. It's just like I feel like we often try and make Shakespeare something that it isn't. And yeah, I don't usually like watching a lot of it. I've seen some that I like, but in general, it's not my favorite. So, I do, however, really like reading it. I really like some of the movies, like more modern movies that they've come out with, where they do like reinterpretations of some of those stories. Like Twelfth Night was reinterpreted as She's the Man, and I adore that movie. I think it's brilliant. Um, and yeah, so there's some kind of cool stuff that happens. So anyway, the other day I was looking at some Shakespeare stuff because I would just really like to read more Shakespeare, but it's not that fun to read alone. Um, and so I just kind of wanted to read some like with other people. So actually, what I'm thinking of doing uh next week, um actually, I probably won't do it next week or the week after, but sometime upcoming, I do want to get some actors together to read some Shakespeare. Um, Next week, as many of you probably know, is the newly appointed Truth and Reconciliation Day. So I would really like to do something um, stories, poems, songs, anything people have as kind of a truth and reconciliation moment. I would really like to do something along the lines of that. And then the following week will be Story Slam. Or sorry, Story Circle. I think it'll be an open theme. But I will let you know next week. Anyway, after that, I would really like to do a reading of maybe just one act of Shakespeare play. If you're interested, please email me. I'm gonna probably soon start soliciting more people to come and hang out with me for these things. I've just sort of been laying low. I felt like I was getting a little bit annoying to people. I'd always ask them. And so I kind of stopped asking people specifically. And I think people just had lots going on during the summer and stuff. And so now I sort of faded away and got a little shy about asking. So don't be surprised if I start asking you. And don't feel shy about saying no. Also, don't feel shy if I don't ask you to just email me virtualvarietynight@gmail.com and just let me know if you're into coming and hanging out with me. I also would like to announce that I believe I am going to change the time and day of virtual variety nights. I think I'm going to switch them to Friday nights. And I think that the time is going to maybe change each week, sort of just depending on other people's availability. So if it's just me, it'll likely still remain 8 o'clock because that time works really well for me. If there's people that are reading some Shakespeare with me and for them it works later or for them it works earlier, we just might switch things up a bit. So if you keep an eye on the Facebook page, then you can kind of get noted or you can get notified about what time things will actually be. And if you're not on Facebook and you're watching this on YouTube and you're not really interested in signing up for Facebook just to find out what time our show is going to be on, then just shoot me an email. No problem. Wonderful. So I was scrolling through some Shakespeare things the other day and saw a title that I just hadn't really remembered seeing before. And again, I'm not like the hugest Shakespeare fan, so I like it when it's in front of me. I don't really seek it out that much. But there was something, and I couldn't remember the name, but I was like, oh, I wonder what that's about. I've never even heard of it. And so I was like, kind of scrolling through this listing of all Shakespeare shows, trying to see if I could remember which one I had been thinking of before. But the list I was scrolling through was all in chronological order. And I didn't end up like noticing which one I noticed before. So, TBD. But I did, all of a sudden it occurred to me, I was like, what was his last show? Because I feel like his last show should be like one of his best shows. So, like, yeah, sure, if someone's just starting out and they're like full of passion and they just really got to get this one story out there, and then they like eventually are like kind of trying to recreate the wheel at a certain point, if their career is long enough, and he certainly um is credited for many plays, you start to like get the craft going. So you would think that that would be kind of one of his better ones because he's the most experienced when he's written it, right? But I had actually not heard of this one either. It's called the Two Noble Kinsmen. And so I just kind of looked at it and read the prologue to myself a couple of times, and a few things struck me. So that's what I'm going to entertain you with today. So I'm going to read through that prologue and then talk about what struck me. And then I'm going to read to you a couple of excerpts from a play that I wrote a few years ago, that I've talked about on here before. It's a play called Rosaline. We did it for the Edmonton Fringe Festival in 2006, with a few very talented friends of mine. And um, I really enjoyed writing the show. I really liked directing the show. I would love to workshop it more and then maybe put it up again somewhere. And it was one that was kind of based on uh, it's kind of like a sequel to Romeo and Juliet, sort of, where Rosaline, who Romeo's in love with at the beginning of Romeo and Juliet, but she says, "No, I'm going to be a nun. I'm not interested in a romantic relationship with you." And then he like goes to a party to try and like convince her that she should be with him and forsake God or whatever. Then he meets Juliet, falls in love with her, blah blah blah. So anyway, I'm going to read you a couple things from that a little bit later as well. But first, I will read to you the prologue to the Two Noble Kinsmen. One of my favorite things so far about this monologue, after the couple times I've read it, is that the stage direction right before the prologue and right at the end is flourish. Which of course is like that or whatever. I just really like it. Makes it feel fancy. New plays and maidenheads are near akin. Much followed both, and both much money gin. I'm gonna start that again. I just like put my screen kind of in a weird spot, and it always drives me insane. Okay. There's something that happens on my computer, you guys, and it is very annoying to me, and I don't know how to fix it. And I never properly prepare ahead of time. Okay. Two Noble King, the Two Noble. This is not my day, guys. The Two Noble Kinsmen, the prologue. New plays and maidenheads are near akin. Much followed both, for both much money gin, if they stand sound and well. And a good play, whose modest scenes blush on his marriage day and shake to lose his honor, is like her, that after holy tie and first night's stir, yet still is modesty, and still retains more of the maid to sight than husband's pains. We pray our play may be so, for I am sure it has a noble breeder, and a pure, a learned, and a poet ne'er went, more famous yet twixt Po and silver Trent. Chaucer, of all admired, the story gives. There constant to eternity it lives. If we let fall the nobleness of this, and the first sound this child hear be a hiss, how will it shake the bones of that good man, and make him cry from underground, "Oh, fan from me the witless chaff of such a writer that blasts my bays, and my famed works makes lighter than Robin Hood." This is the fear we bring. For to say truth, if it were an endless thing, or for to say truth, it were an endless thing, and too ambitious to aspire to him, weak as we are and almost breathless, swim in this deep water. Do but hold out your helping hands, and we shall tack about and something do to save us. You shall hear scenes, though below his art, may yet appear worth 2 hours' travail. To his bones, sweet sleep, content to you. If this play do not keep a little dull time from us, we perceive our losses fall so thick we must needs leave. Flourish. Yeah, so two main things stuck out to me from that. First of all, that it appears that when Shakespeare is feeling like he needs some inspiration, he also goes to old writers. So he had seen Chaucer's A Knight's Tale, I think it was, and then did his version as the Two Noble Kinsmen. So I assume that's why this play isn't done that much. I haven't read the whole thing yet. I've only read this one part. So I don't know if maybe it's just terrible, or if it's because if people are going to do it, they'll want to do Chaucer's version, since it was, I don't know, he came up with the story. I don't know. Cool. So the other thing that really stuck out to me is that writers seem really obsessed with the women's virginity, girls' virginity. We know this. We all know this. And yeah, so I was just thinking about that. And in the play that I wrote, Rosaline, I also talk a lot about virginity as this, I don't know, it's like such a weird thing. I have tons to say about it, but also, yeah, let's let Shakespeare talk about it, I guess. But yeah, so I thought I would read a couple of bits from Rosaline, the script I wrote. And first, I just wanted to go through the prologue, because I'm also talking about prologues today. I just wanted to go through the prologue of Romeo and Juliet. I think I was saying before that it must seem like I'm a huge fan of Shakespeare, and I am a fan of Shakespeare, but like not that big. It's just I don't know that many writers that like don't still have rights to their work or that wouldn't mind, like, that are public domain stuff, that I can kind of count on to deliver. So usually whatever I'm looking for Shakespeare, I can find it in there, and it may not be the most like perfect example, but it is public domain, so I don't have to worry about getting rights to it and that kind of stuff. So that is often why I go to Shakespeare. I just forgot to finish that thought earlier. So this is the prologue to Romeo and Juliet. It probably sounds familiar to a lot of you. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventured piteous overthrows doth with their death bury their parents' strife. The fearful passage of their death-marked love, and the continuance of their parents' rage, which but their children's end not could remove, is now the 2 hours' traffic of our stage. The which, if you with patient ears attend, what here shall miss, our toil shall strive to mend. Cool. So in that prologue, they're basically just like, this is what's going to happen. If you get lost somewhere, just remember this is what happens. Okay. And then just enjoy the jokes and stuff. Whereas the Noble Kinsman one is more like, sorry, we're gonna try and do justice to this story somebody else wrote, and so instead of just putting on their play, we're gonna try to do our own, and we'll never do it justice, and I'm sorry, which is just weird, I feel like. And it's also weird how much that is compared to virginity and the purity of women. Like, that's how you're supposed to be, like, oh no, I couldn't possibly, oh no. And like that's what these playwrights are doing. It's just weird. So yeah, there's two parts that I just wanted to read you out of Rosaline. The first one that I'll read is just a monologue from it where so in this play, I'll just give you a little bit of background. Rosaline hears the story that goes around Verona of Romeo and Juliet, and they're like, go down in history of this great love story, and she's jealous. She's like, hey, like, he wanted me first, so I should be the one that gets to go down in history in this great love story, and maybe I was wrong to say I should be a nun. And yeah, so Rosalind likes unavailable men who are dead, or she does not avail herself to them when they want her. And so yeah, so then she's like praying by the Romeo's grave, saying, I really, should have been with you, and blah blah blah, regret. This is so sad, blah blah blah. Meanwhile, Romeo and Juliet's ghost are listening to her, and Romeo's like, oh, that's so sad. She misses me so much. And Juliet gets kind of mad. And she's like, she had her chance. I'm your true love, not this Rosaline chick. And so then she starts talking to Rosaline. And yeah, so then they kind of have this little debate. And Juliet speaks what I call the Blood Monologue. And yeah, I just remembered this one, and it reminded me of always the talk of virginity. And so this is Juliet's ghost talking to Rosaline. Most women do much more than bleed for love, and bleeding is the least that's asked of us. For chance to love a son, we monthly shed the flesh and blood that lines his 9-month bed. a bed left empty, and this blood for naught, if seek we to protect our wedding sheets, refusing proof of our virginity. For in our blood, our pledge is trustworthy. My word may be as weak as women are in eyes of men who doubt my honesty, but in my blood, my honor does grow strong, and for my honor, I'll shed blood gladly. But even this much blood is not enough to quench the vampire thirst of life and men. For even if our monthly curse suspends, in pregnancy is where the pain begins. The swollen, bleeding hemorrhoids are a boon when we compare them to the vomiting. So every cracker, egg, and bit of cheese that starts arranged so nicely on our plate becomes a chunky, putrid mass of bile that lines the contours of our toilet seat. And all this to announce the main event, the precious head that pushes through our loins. You wish to talk of blood, dear Rosaline? That precious head that squeezes its way through, that rips and tears its way through vulvic flesh, can cause more pain and maybe as much blood as if you were to die 1,000 deaths. But hold that newborn baby in your arms. Even after fighting through the blood and pain, just hold that newborn baby in your arms, and you might know why women don't complain. But here, you stand in front of Juliet, who pierced an iron sword into her breast, and what? You're hoping I'll agree that trading love for comfort would be best? Cupid's bow makes women bleed, 'tis true. But if we do not bear this cross and more, we may be rich in beauty, only poor. That when we die, with beauty dies our store. Yeah, so I really like vulvic flesh and the vampire thirst of life and men. Everyone always wants us to bleed. So yeah, that's just part of their the ghost of Juliet arguing with Rosaline. But then I also just wanted to read to you my prologue for that play. So this prologue is longer than most of Shakespeare's. It is given by a narrator, although there is a section of it in which there's some blocking that's happening that he's watching. And Rosaline does have a short monologue within it. So yeah, I'll just try and make my voice different or whatever when I'm being Rosaline. I think you'll figure it out. I'm gonna try some acty sort of stuff because I always hear this particular monologue as being really creepy. I doubt you have not heard the story yet of one Montague and his Capulet, or Romeo and Juliet, if you prefer, but you may have forgotten she who could have been her. Her name is but a word I'm sure you've heard in one ear and out the other, remembered only by her mother. A brief introduction is in order. Here is the woman who was once a girl that Romeo gazed on sweetly. A girl that Romeo chased and tried to woo, may I add, none too discreetly. Here is the woman whose virginity won out in the end. She took a vow of chastity while blind to all around the future bend. She is now all that she was, except innocent and naive. I would like to share her story with you. You'll hear it all before you leave. There once was a girl, beautiful beyond description, too beautiful, too lovely, too kind. She was all of these compliments wrapped in a word, and the word was Rosaline. It was the evening of a casual argument, but at the first sign of an opposable finger chewed off at the knuckle, glares turned to steel, and threat of profanity became call for blood. Where are the clowns? The heavy breathing and sweat tempt the oncoming climax, that the screams and grunts that follow do little to dissuade. But like a woman left open and dripping, both armies are raped of their deserved satisfaction. The war is not meant to be won. It is meant to be continuous. No one reaches the top of Mount Ague. Her ice capulet remain unscarred. Each upset he could not dominate the other. They turn instead to an event where the competition isn't so fierce. A party! One part romance, one part sport. And though on neither side was the thirst for violence quenched, one side chose to drive defensively, while the other went the route of a head-on collision. Crash! I must admit Rosaline was the inspiration, and glad was she to have this second chance. Her virginal shyness had recently subsided, and where before she was reluctant, she now longed to lay her heart on the table. But alas, if she was fashionably late, then some gentlemen care not for fashion. In a way, it doesn't matter whether you open doors or close them. You still end up in a box. The very man who had inside his pants the key to pry her head from between her legs was the same man who gave her jealousy bars. Oh, she may teach the torches to burn bright, but I relate the depths of fire's reach. And while she hangs upon the cheek of night, I dangle from a prayer, and death beseech to let me quit this divine cursed land, as Romeo make blessed his rude hand. Did you love till now? You did forswear a promise soon forgot with her in sight. You won't forget the price, for now I'll share. I never saw true heartbreak till this night. And so, oblivious to shattered hearts, the legendary star-crossed couple meets. This first sight love sweetness cannot be soured by the lemon-tasting news of blood feuding. Wedding bells may not have rung out loud, but sure as I am standing before you, a wedding is a wedding, bells or none. But after consummation of this bliss, the first of a tragedy's succession creeps up on the star-eyed unsuspectings. Juliet's blood kills Romeo's love. So Romeo kills Juliet's blood. Accidents happen. In infinity there are no bathrooms. Banished from Verona falls our protagonist, but his love sides with him and not with blood. She plots to chase elusive happiness with a shot of potion that will devastate her family. An interesting fact for you to note, and one that Romeo was not aware. Appearances may be deceiving. This fact was wrapped in an impotent message that failed to impregnate poor Romeo with wisdom, and so he believed the gossip that permeated past Verona's borders. Don't believe everything you hear. He stole at once back into Forbidden Land to see the body of his broken heart, and being unable to bear his loss, he downed a special potion of his own. But where hers concealed breath and pounding pulse, his stopped the flow of blood and air. When Juliet rose from her simulated death, she was greeted by unimaginable horror and took up a sword to end her pain. End of prologue. Yeah, so soon I would really like to do a reading of the Two Noble Kinsmen prologue. And so I think I will do that. Yeah, maybe like we'll do one act a month for the next 5 months or something. So I am looking for actors to do that. So please email me at virtualvarietynight@gmail.com. Thanks very much for indulging me in reminiscing a bit about this play. And maybe I'll get it workshopped sometime in the future. Thanks a lot for joining me today. It was, as always, a sincere pleasure. And I will see you guys next week. But I will most likely see you on Friday, not Thursday.
We need a theme song, so could you please send me a theme song? 'Cause we don't really have a theme song, and we could really use a theme song. Send us a song.
Bye.